graphical representation of supply and demand relationship. The supply-demand model represents the determination of the price of a particular good and the quantity of that good which is traded. The standard graphical representation, usually credited to Alfred Marshall, has price on the vertical axis and quantity on the horizontal axis. When supply and demand are equal, i.e., when the supply function and demand function intersect, the economy is said to be at equilibrium. At this point of equilibrium, the allocation of goods is at its most efficient because the amount of goods being supplied is exactly the same as the amount of goods being demanded. Thus, everyone, individuals, firms, or countries, is satisfied with the current economic condition. At the given price, suppliers are selling all the goods that they have produced and consumers are getting all the goods that they are demanding. Changes in supply and demand can be short-run or long-run in nature. Weather tends to influence market prices generally in the short run. Changes in consumer preferences can have either a short-run or long-run effect on prices depending upon the goods or services. They are categorized based on importance of product, i.e., luxuries or necessities. A luxury good may enjoy a short-term shift in demand due to changing styles or appeal, while necessities tend to have stable or long-run demand curves. Another major factor influencing market prices is technology. A major effect of technology in agriculture is to shift out the supply curve rapidly by reducing the costs of production on a per-unit basis. Here is an example to illustrate the law of supply and demand. For a particular Saturday night, the willingness of particular restaurants to supply a nice dinner for two, and the willingness of couples to dine out is observed depending on the price of the dinner. There are 5 restaurants, each with a seating capacity of 30 couples. One restaurant is willing to supply a nice dinner for $15 a couple, but the others require higher prices. If the price were $15, everyone would show up at the one restaurant so that it would have a very long line. Only 30 lucky couples would get to eat. There are 250 couples willing to go out for dinner if the price were as low as $12 a couple. 20 couples would be willing to pay as much as $80, but everyone else requires lower prices. Here is the whole picture. The price P of a product is determined by a balance between production at each price, supply S, and the desires of those with purchasing power at each price, demand D. The diagram shows a positive shift in demand from D1 to D2, resulting in an increase in price P and quantity sold Q of the product. Demand management is the supply chain management process that balances the customer S requirements with the capabilities of the supply chain. Managing supply with demand factors are essentially using the right process, forecasting, and executing the plan with minimal disruptions. It includes synchronizing supply and demand, increasing flexibility, and reducing variability. Demand chain management is the management of upstream and downstream relationships between suppliers and customers to deliver the best value to the customer at the least cost to the demand chain as a whole. The organization's supply chain processes are managed to deliver best value according to the demand of the customers. Successful demand management requires not only to provide more customer services, but also to provide effective service outcomes to meet identified community needs, assess if this need is changing to respond appropriately, and within the available resources. Demand management is a key element of reform in the resource planning and management process. Demand can be managed in a variety of ways. Reduction in need for the service. For example, actions to raise awareness of the benefits of pregnant women taking foliate will reduce the need for medical and social support for children with neural tube defects. Alteration of ways to meet the needs to reduce pressure on available resources. For example, trialing different accommodation alternatives to reduce the demand for individual accommodation units. Education and awareness of consumers to limit consumption. For example, educating water users to save water during droughts has led to significant reduction in demand. Mechanisms of pricing. For example, charging consumers a truer price for water encourages more responsible use and may reduce the demand. Service delivery levels revision. For example, the threshold at which benefits become available or the level at which benefits are provided will be changed. Imposing legal penalty. For example, fines can be imposed for use of fixed sprinklers during the evening to reduce demand for additional reservoir pumping capacity.